speaking of international players that are have having interesting summers, Lowry Markkanen. So the Jazz are, at the risk of parodying myself, the Jazz are up to something. They have not signed their draft picks to save cap space, and even though they're way under the cap. And I was talking to some teams in the last few days who said that they basically shut down any conversations. They did the Russell Westbrook trade where they took on his contract, and then they made him take a buyout, which, it's, look, he left $2 million. It's fine. He's going to be made whole.
He got the money he's going to get from the Nuggets.
Right.
Whenever he signs there.
They worked on that for a while to get him to take less money. And from what I am told, some teams that have been talking to them about offloading more money there, the Jazz are telling teams we're not using any of our cap space right now.
No, it's earmarked for a Markkanen renegotiation and extension. They can give him whatever cap space they have left, tack that onto this year, and extend. And look, obviously, there's been a lot of discussion here, elsewhere around the league about Lowry Markkanen possibly being traded. The Warriors have shown interest. The Spurs at least had some conversations. The Kings showed interest before they went in a different direction with DeMar DeRozan. And he's a player who could help a lot of teams. He's a player who would be a great fit for a lot of teams. He's also a player that you're not getting a discount rate on. I mean, it's like the Jazz, I don't believe are shopping him. But if you give them an offer they can't refuse, they would take it. There's been nothing close to an offer they can't refuse. Now, and then we've got this situation where, like I said, he is eligible to sign a contract extension that they can use that cap space on, which that's why you're hoarding that cap space. He's eligible to sign that August 6th. If he signs it August 6th, exactly 6 months from that date is the trade deadline. So he can be traded this year if he signs it August 6th. If he signs it August 7th or any day after that, he cannot be traded this year. Fellas, I'm here to tell you, the one scenario that I absolutely, I'm not going to say guarantee, but I will walk from Park City to Salt Lake City for a game to cover a game next year if Lowry Markkanen signs the extension on August 6th. If he signs that extension, he's going to give himself what essentially is a 1 year no trade exception. In other words, all he has to do is wait a day or a little bit longer. But Lowry Markkanen, who has said he enjoys being in Utah, who enjoys playing for Will Hardy, who's played his best basketball for the Jazz, who is a married father with young children.
Well, what if they say the contract's not on the table on August 7th, that the contract's on the table on August 6th only?
Fine, I'll be a free agent next year, and you guys have a chance to lose me for nothing.
Well,
why would they do that?
To me, because I would say for a couple of reasons. One, he will lose if you just say you're going to do that, right? He's losing 30. What can he go up to in a max this year?
I'm not Bobby Marks. It's a whatever they're
the key about a renegotiation is that you can get more money now. You can get potentially a ton of money this year that you're not contracted to get. Whatever you would sign for in the future, that's all terrific. But this is found money, which is why he's highly incentivized to do it.
Right. So from the Jazz side of it, I'll just play the devil's advocate side of it, right? If you're the Jazz, you go to Lowry. You say, Lowry, listen, if you sign this on 8-6, we'll bump you up as far as we can absolutely bump you up this year. And then obviously we can figure out what the negotiation is on the back part of the deal. We can maybe bring it down some and save some money in the out years because we're giving you $30 million today that you wouldn't otherwise get. We could do a lot of stuff in this deal. If you don't sign it on August 6th and you want to sign it later and you want to give yourself that year of security, that's fine. But we're going to structure that deal a little differently then, because it becomes a different level of value of contract to us if you're not able to be traded this year. Doesn't mean you're going to be traded this year. We might have an offer where you want to be traded this year. But if you want to sign it on the 7th and you can't get traded till next summer, then the negotiations are going to go a little different. That's at least if I'm the Jazz, that's what I'm presenting to him, because he could say, well, yeah, then I just won't sign. I'll just go into free agency in a year. Like, okay, sure, you could bluff with that, but A, there's very few teams with cap space next summer, and B, are you really walking away from $30 million or $32 million or whatever the exact number is this year? I mean, I don't buy that.
Markkanen probably is still, I shouldn't say, Markkanen, I don't want to put words in his mouth. My guess is that Markkanen still is upset the contract that he had to sign a few years ago when he had like no options and the Cavs came in and bailed him out with a sign and trade at the end. He wanted more money and is proven that he's worth more money. This is a way to sort of right that quote unquote injustice. There's a way to earn back the contract that he got that is below market value.
Yeah, he signed a $67 million 4-year deal 3 years ago. So over the last 3 years, he's made roughly $48 million. So if I'm the Jazz, I'm going to say, fine. You're really going to walk away from getting an extra 30 plus right now? Okay.
I don't anticipate this. I don't anticipate this being a real hardball type of negotiation between the Jazz and Markkanen. That's not the feeling that I get.
Well, I mean, it may not be, but that's
that's
the discussion I would have between the 6th and beyond, personally.
Well, there's some people. Well, first off, the Jazz have to spend the money because the floor is compulsory. You can't not do it in the new CBA. You have to spend it. That's number one. Number two, there are people in the league who believe that Markkanen becomes much more tradable after you extend him.
100%.
Because he's not a rental player. And secondly, if you structure the contract where it starts out high and then descends, it's not like, it's a disadvantage for the Jazz. Again, they have to spend the money. It could be a contract that could be seen as a huge asset. So the Jazz can increase Markkanen's value by giving him the contract.
Yeah, and again, the other thing, it's not like the Jazz are saying we've got to move Lauri Markkanen. Well, okay, Markkanen's on the market, highest bidder. No, he's not quote unquote on the market. It's like if you're driving a nice car and you don't plan to sell it, but somebody, but people are asking you about it and you're getting offers. Well, you might take one of the offers, but there's not a for sale sign in the windshield.
So Bobby Marks, I just texted Bobby to get the correct numbers because he's smarter than us. And the max Larry can go up to for this year is $42 million. So essentially a $24 million raise, which is half of the money he's made roughly over the last 3 years, all at once, which is a pretty nice thing.
Yeah. Now it's he wasn't expecting. He spent the last 3 years not expecting it.
That's right.
I can't say that enough.
Now, a couple other things about this. One, we saw Domantas Sabonis from the Kings get this extension a couple of years ago. They got the renegotiation extension last summer. Right. At the time, when he got that raise, I was surprised that he just got that number flat going forward and there was no drop down later. Because again, there's not really a knock on Sabonis as a player, more that if you're giving a guy $20+ million in the first year that he doesn't necessarily have to get, ideally, you're getting some kind of give back in the future to balance that out because you're doing them a big solid off the jump. That will be an interesting part of this. And maybe it will be simple and they'll do the same thing with him, Tim. I would suspect that the Jazz are going to at least try to have that number come down a little bit because with these renegotiation extensions, you can go up to the max and then the out years, you could drop it down some and then go forward at a lower number, which would also add to his trade value. And then the other thing that's hanging over this entire situation is you mentioned that there's a lack of offers out there that commensurate with what the Jazz want. You just saw Mikal Bridges, a non-all-star, be traded for 5 first-round picks. We've seen The Jazz make multiple trades for giant picks in the past with Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell. We've seen all these other trades with all these guys traded around for all these picks all over the place, right? Mm-hmm. There's just not a lot of picks left, and there's not a lot of teams left with picks available in places where it makes sense for a guy like Lauri Markkanen to go.
Well, there's one.
There's
no,
two.
but that's are we saying Golden State and Houston?
Well, 3 if you want to count Houston. Oklahoma City, you can always throw Oklahoma City into these conversations. Having said that, they made 2 big moves without giving up a first-round pick this summer, amazingly, somehow.
And it's also not not really in their MO to do that kind of a thing.
Well, and they're in a situation where one of the moves they made was to get Hartenstein. So Chet will be playing some 4. So, you could say that could be a crowded situation. And then the other thing is they're managing a payroll that's going to get big. Shea's going to be a super max player. Chet might be. J-Dub's going to be a max player. So they might not, all indications are they have not been eager to add another massive type of salary like Lowry's next deal would be.
Right.
San Antonio is the one. If Spurs wanted to take that swing, they absolutely positively could.
Right, but they're despite the fact that you've got them winning 50 games, they're not in a position to. It's a joke. Relax, it's a joke. They're not.
While McMahon is walking from Park City to Salt Lake, he's going to be mumbling about that bet.
Look, they're just. My point is, there's a couple. You could point to Oklahoma City. You could point to San Antonio. You could point to some of these other, even Houston to a lesser extent. Like we've talked about Houston wanting to go to phase 3. I'm not sure they're in a position to push all the chips in right now, right? So if you look around, all the teams that are really in a position where you'd say, hey, they're going to throw everything they can to try to get Lauri Markkanen, a lot of those teams have already pushed their chips in on other stuff. And I do think we're in a bit of a weird period now when it comes to these kind of trades where if guys become available for trade over the next couple of years, there's not a ton of places where there's just oodles of draft picks sitting there for some team to go get them, because a lot of the teams that have those picks are not in a position to trade for a guy like that. And so I don't think they're going to do it. And that's why you have a weird situation now with Markkanen where there's not a ton of situations where it makes a ton of sense to cash all the chips in to get them.
The Warriors do have 4 tradable firsts.
They do.
They do, but I also don't think it makes a lot of sense personally to trade for Lauri Markkanen if I'm the Warriors.
But you're just going through teams that they're not teams that are exhausted in picks. I'm just saying the Warriors have.
Oh yeah, they and I think to a lesser extent the Rockets, because we just don't know exactly where their heads are at, where their trajectory is. Mm-hmm. Those are the 2 teams that where if there's some star/superstar level player that comes available the next couple of years, whoever it is, whether it's Lowry or others, they're the ones that you're immediately going to look to and say, what are they going to do? Because Houston's got draft picks and a ton of young guys, and Golden State has got young guys and at least enough draft capital to get themselves into conversation with people.
And the Warriors look, Steph is 36. So are you really want to go all in on a win now move when the face of the franchise is 36 years old and give up basically throw all the future draft capital you can throw in terms of the first round picks of swaps, plus the first round pick that you hit on last year? Because they're I just don't see how the Jazz would ever do that deal without Podziemski in it. Kuminga, that's a different thing because, again, a lot of this comes down to money. Kuminga, you'd have to pay now. Podziemski's got 3 years left on his rookie deal, which is exactly why the Warriors are we can't put him in that deal. So
the Warriors, it makes sense for them to do a trade like that if they're getting a guy that's better than Steph Curry today. And Lauri Markkanen's a nice player. He ain't better than Steph Curry today.
Yeah.
And there's not many players even at 36 that are better than Steph Curry today, which is why they're sitting here having not done anything to this point.
I think if that deal was going to happen, it would have happened. But if he does sign on August 6th.
Oof. I just looked it up. It's a 32-mile trek.
Now I'm gonna call some people with Jazz today and say, listen, you could really have something amazing happen if you
in the altitude, buddy.
I'd have to
August 6th.
I'd have to arrange for that to be a fall deal. I ain't doing it.
Well, you can do it any day you want.
Is
over
it
the next down year. You
downhill?
don't got to do it in August. You could do it in October. You could do it whenever.
Is it downhill from Park City to Salt Lake?
I don't think anything in Utah's flat or one way. I think there's ups and downs on that trek.
I don't know. Yeah,
I might have to call in some favors to try to make this happen, because
We've got some fans of the pod in Utah.
I'm pretty sure I've got Lowry's wife and young kids on my side. So
all right. Well, that's something we're going to keep an eye on in addition to the Olympic basketball tournament, which we'll be talking about next week. We'll see if the Jackson's looking at the topographical map and doing some analysis.
I don't even know what topographical means.
It means it shows all the hills, buddy. And it's not going to be an easy walk if this happens. So let's hope for your sake it does.